to Rupert Lowe. He's a former Brexit Party MEP and joins us now. Good morning to you, Rupert.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining. Very well indeed. It's a very lively day today. That's certainly the case. What's the interesting thing is we had Keir Starmer heading off to see President Macron. I'm amazed. I've not been invited to see President Macron this week. He's got the King and the Queen, and he's got the possible future Prime Minister as well. And they met on Tuesday. We understand that that meeting was basically orchestrated by Tony Blair, who has his fingers in every single pie. We now know he's got half the shadow cabinets, former advisors and former MPs in his day working with Keir Starmer. And for some good reason, I don't know why, France and Germany kind of decided to publicise their secret plan to have a sort of different tiers of EU membership. So the inner cabal of, the members of the Eurozone, and then a wider cabal, and then Tier 3, effectively, countries like Britain having free trade but not being part of the inner sanctum, but still being somehow linked to the EU. Do you think that was a coincidence that all happened on the same day?
Well, I think the most deeply concerning thing, Julia, you've touched on it, is that the Iraqi warrior himself, Tony Blair, seems to be pulling the strings like the marionette master. So, it's really quite concerning, I think, for the whole of Britain that he should be exerting this influence. That's the first point to make. The second point to make is that when you look at a collection of Mr. Starmer, human rights lawyer, Mr. Lammy, Ms. Reeves, and then you have Angela Rayner on the bench, you're not filled with total confidence that they're going to be delivering the right outcome for Britain. But the problem here, I think, is that the French, Mr. Macron, the lame duck president of France, who's now basically not going to be able to stand again, and I think he's thrashing around looking for headlines, really. And I think this came the day before the royals visited is itself quite sad. But really, I think the root cause of this, Julia, is that the EU, and we voted in 2016 to leave the EU. It was a very simple question. The British people gave the answer. And to even think about any form of associate membership is frankly ridiculous.
Well, I don't mind any party standing at election with a manifesto saying this is what we're going to do. We got a very clear choice in 2019, did we not? Well, we had Keir Starmer as Shadow Brexit Secretary then, very much pushing this agenda, and they made it very clear they wanted to have a second referendum before we'd even enacted the outcome of the first referendum. Not a Democrat, doesn't believe the British people should have their say. If you get the decision wrong, then us people who know better, the bien-pensant, than all North London Disney dinner parties, okay, we will decide for you. Now, the key thing there is that, they asked the voters, and the voters said, no, thank you, and they elected Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, with that overwhelming majority to deliver Brexit. That was the answer, asked and answered. It is perfectly legitimate, is it not, to still have a debate, people who want to be part of the EU, about whether or not we could rejoin, if they put that in a manifesto and people voted on it, or whether they wanted some sort of associate membership, because an awful lot of people, I don't know anyone who voted leave who regrets voting leave. Everything that's happened since has absolutely cemented my knowledge, my decision that was the right thing to do. But a lot of people would like a better deal with the EU. A lot of people would like closer ties with the EU. Would that not be the best way of getting it, some might argue?
Well, I think, again, I was just going to say, the problem here, I think, is that Europe is actually faring worse. And your previous guest just said, Germany is in deep trouble. She's struggling with the sort of change from the internal combustion engine to the electric car. She's got all the legacy issues of her old factories, and she's really struggling economically. France, equally, I always say she's got her head in Northern Europe, but the majority of her body's in Southern Europe. Economically, she's a bit of a basket case. And I personally think what's happened here, and it's no change. Europe came about, the European Union, whether you take it right from its roots just after the Marshall Plan, the European Coal and Steel Community, it's all been built on deceit, Julia. And what you and I think, would like to see is transparent democratic government, where you say what you're going to do,
and then do it. Well, talk about transparency just briefly. Can we trust Keir Starmer? Given we know what his history was as happy for him to campaign for Remain, perfectly legitimate, reasonable thing for him to have done, but campaigning to stop the enactment of the EU referendum when he was Shadow Brexit Secretary. What he said since that we're not going to be undermining Brexit, we're not going to rejoin the single market or the customs union, and he says it's a non-starter. He says this third tier associate membership. Can we trust what he says, given his past behaviour?
Well, you can't trust any of the Westminster establishment, Julia. This is the problem. This is why people need to vote for the Reform Party, because that none of them believe in Brexit. Brexit has not been delivered really by a combination of dumb insolence from our leaders and incompetence. It's a blend of the two. They don't want it and they don't know how to deliver it properly. And the negotiations that we held with Europe, I mean, I admire the French, you know, they're nationalists, which in itself goes against everything the European Union stands for. But at least you have to admire them for being nationalists, and they stand up for what France is. But, you know, in the end, is France our ally or our enemy? And how would Macron like it if Rishi Sunak invited Marine Le Pen to number 10 to have a few conversations?
That's a very, very good point. Rupert, we'll have to leave it there. Rupert Lowe, former Brexit Party MEP.